I have managed the Grover Community Storm Shelter for 14 years. I know every crack in the concrete, every emergency supply, every fold-out cot and first aid kit. I have shepherded hundreds of people through dozens of storms, kept them safe underground, while tornadoes tore apart the world above. I thought I knew everything about this shelter, every rule, every procedure, every detail of its operation. I wrote most of the protocols myself, posted them on the walls, trained volunteers to enforce them. But 3 weeks ago, new rules appeared. My name is Dean Hartwell. I am 51 years old, and I manage the only public storm shelter in Grover, Oklahoma. It is a reinforced concrete bunker beneath the town's community center, capable of holding up to 200 people. When the sirens go off, when the sky turns green and the wind starts to howl, this is where the people of Grover come to survive. I found the new rules during a routine inspection, posted on the wall near the back of the shelter, where I had never posted anything. The paper looked official, the same font and format as my own postings. Laminated, professional, like something that had always been there. But the rules on that sheet were not my rules. They were rules I had never written, never seen, never even imagined. Rules that made no sense for a storm shelter. Rules that seemed designed for something other than protecting people from tornadoes. I tried to remove the posting, tried to tear it down, throw it away, pretend I had never seen it. The next morning, the rules were back. Same spot, same laminated sheet. No sign of anyone having entered the shelter overnight. Now tornado season is here, and people are going to need the shelter. And I have learned what happens when the rules are not followed. The Grover Community Storm Shelter was built in 1974, the year after a devastating tornado killed 37 people in our town. The community raised money, hired engineers, constructed a bunker that could withstand anything the sky could throw at it. The shelter was carved into the bedrock beneath the community center. Reinforced concrete walls 3 feet thick. Steel blast doors that could seal against 200-mile-per-hour winds. Emergency generators, water supplies, canned food, medical equipment. Everything needed to keep people alive for days, if necessary. I took over as manager when the previous manager, a man named Virgil Tate, retired 14 years ago. Virgil had run the shelter for nearly 30 years before that, one of the original volunteers who helped build it back in the 70s. Virgil was a quiet man, prone to strange silences and long stares at the shelter walls. When he handed over the keys to me, he said something odd. He said to follow the rules. All of them, even the ones that did not make sense. I assumed he meant the standard emergency protocols, the procedures for intake, the regulations for capacity, the guidelines for medical emergencies. I nodded and thanked him for his service and thought nothing more of it. Now, 14 years later, I understand what Virgil really meant. There are 7 rules on the laminated sheet that appeared 3 weeks ago. I have read them so many times that I can recite them from memory. The first rule says that if anyone knocks on the shelter door after it has been sealed, do not open it. Not for any reason. Not even if they claim to be someone you know. The second rule says that if the lights flicker 3 times in rapid succession, everyone must close their eyes and count to 60. No one may open their eyes before the count is complete. The third rule says that if you hear your name called from the ventilation system, do not respond. Do not acknowledge that you heard it. Continue whatever you were doing as if nothing happened. The fourth rule says that children under the age of 10 must never be left alone in the shelter, not for any reason, not even for a moment. The fifth rule says that if anyone begins speaking in a language they do not know, move them to the center of the room immediately. Do not let them touch the walls. The sixth rule says that the back storage room must remain locked during any storm. No one may enter it until the all clear has been given. The seventh rule says that if all of the above rules are followed, everyone will survive. If any rule is broken, the shelter cannot guarantee protection. When I first read these rules, I assumed it was a prank. Some bored teenager who had broken in and posted fake rules to scare people. I tore down the laminated sheet and threw it in the dumpster outside. The next morning, the rules were back. I installed a camera, reviewed the footage, saw nothing. The rules simply appeared sometime between my evening inspection and my morning arrival, as if they had materialized out of the concrete itself. I stopped trying to remove them after the third time. At the bottom of the sheet, in small text, a single sentence caught my eye. It said, "These rules have protected this shelter since 1974, the year the shelter was built." The first major storm of the season came on a Tuesday afternoon in late April, a supercell that developed faster than the forecasters predicted, spawning a tornado that headed straight for Grover. The sirens went off around 4 in the afternoon. I rushed to the community center, unlocked the shelter, and began intake procedures. Families arrived in waves, carrying children and pets and whatever valuables they had grabbed in their panic. Within 30 minutes, the shelter held 147 people. Men, women, children, elderly, all crowded together in the reinforced bunker, listening to the muffled roar of the storm above. I sealed the blast doors and announced that everyone was safe. The shelter would hold. They just needed to wait out the storm and everything would be fine. But as I made my rounds, checking on families and distributing water, I noticed people reading the rules posted in the back corner, noticed the confusion on their faces, the questions forming in their eyes. A woman named Ruth Benson approached me. She was a long-time resident of Grover, someone I had known for years. She asked about the rules, asked why they were so strange, what they meant, whether they were some kind of joke. I did not know how to answer. I said the rules were precautionary measures, standard protocols, nothing to worry about. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. My heart stopped. I looked at the rules posted on the wall. The second rule: if the lights flicker 3 times in rapid succession, everyone must close their eyes and count to 60. I did not know if the rule was real, did not know if it mattered, but something in my gut told me to follow it. I shouted for everyone to close their eyes, told them it was a safety drill, a precaution, something they needed to do right now. My voice was loud enough and urgent enough that people obeyed without question. 147 people closed their eyes and began to count. I closed my own eyes and counted along with everyone else. The sound started around the count of 20, a movement in the air, like something large passing through the room. I could feel it, a displacement of pressure, a presence that had weight and substance, even though I could not see it. I heard footsteps, not the shuffling of the people around me, but something else, something that moved between us, around us, through us. Steps that clicked on the concrete floor in a rhythm that did not match human walking. A child started to whimper. I heard a mother shushing, heard the whispered reassurance that everything was okay, that they just needed to keep counting. At 35, someone spoke. A man's voice, somewhere near the front of the shelter, saying something I could not quite hear. The voice sounded confused, questioning, as if the man had opened his eyes and was trying to understand what he was seeing. Then the voice stopped, abruptly, completely, as if someone had pressed a mute button. I kept counting. 40, 45, 50. The presence moved closer. I could feel it standing in front of me, could feel something studying me from inches away. The air grew cold, unbearably cold, and there was a smell like old stone and something else, something organic and wrong. I kept my eyes closed, kept counting. 55, 56. The presence lingered. I could feel breath on my face, or something like breath, a movement of air that carried no warmth. 57, 58, 59. The presence withdrew. The cold faded. The footsteps clicked away, moving toward the back of the shelter, towards the storage room. 60. I opened my eyes. Everyone was still there. 147 people, all opening their eyes, all looking around with confusion and relief. Except for one thing. The man who had spoken during the count, Harold Simmons, was gone. His wife was standing where he had been, looking at the empty space beside her with an expression of incomprehension. She asked where Harold was, asked if anyone had seen him leave. No one had seen anything. No one knew what had happened. Harold Simmons was simply gone, as if he had never existed. The tornado passed without hitting Grover directly, and when the all-clear came, people filed out of the shelter and returned to their homes. But Harold did not return. His wife filed a missing person report. The police searched the shelter, the community center, the surrounding area. They found nothing. The official conclusion was that Harold had somehow left the shelter during the storm. Panicked, maybe, and run outside despite the danger. But I knew that was not true. Harold had been standing right there, eyes closed, counting along with everyone else, until he spoke, until he broke the second rule. I went back to the shelter that night, alone. I stood in front of the posted rules and read them again by flashlight. I thought about Virgil Tate, the previous manager, and his strange warning about following all the rules. Virgil must have known, must have seen the rules appear, must have followed them for 30 years, must have kept the secret because who would believe him? The shelter protected people from tornadoes, but there was something else down here, something that required different protections. The rules were not for emergencies. The rules were for whatever lived in the shelter during storms. The second major storm came 2 weeks later. A tornado outbreak, multiple supercells spawning funnels across the county, the worst weather event in years. The shelter filled to capacity. 200 people crammed into the underground bunker, more than I had ever managed at once. Families pressed together on benches, children crying, the air growing thick with body heat and fear. I sealed the doors and checked the rules. Made sure they were still posted, still readable, still there to guide me through whatever was coming. The storm raged above. The muffled roar of the wind, the distant crack of thunder, the occasional shudder as debris struck the community center overhead. But the shelter held. Then someone knocked on the door. 3 heavy knocks, echoing through the concrete chamber. A voice from outside, muffled but audible, calling for help. Saying they had been caught outside. Saying they needed shelter. Saying, please, please let them in. People looked at me, looked at the door. The voice sounded desperate, terrified, human in every way that mattered. But the first rule was clear. If anyone knocks on the shelter door after it has been sealed, do not open it. A man named Owen Pruitt pushed towards the door, said they could not leave someone outside to die, said it was inhuman, wrong, against everything the shelter was supposed to stand for. I blocked his path, told Owen we could not open the door, could not risk the people inside for whoever was outside. Owen shoved me aside, reached for the door handle. The voice outside changed. The desperation faded, replaced by something else, something patient, something amused. It called Owen by name, said it knew him, said it knew everyone in the shelter, knew their names and their secrets and the things they tried to hide. Owen froze. His hand hovered over the handle, shaking. The voice laughed, a sound that did not fit through the 3-foot concrete walls, that seemed to come from everywhere at once, that resonated in the bones of everyone who heard it. Then it stopped. The knocking stopped. The voice stopped. Owen backed away from the door, his face white, his hands trembling. No one tried to open the door again. The storm continued for another hour. The air in the shelter grew stale, the ventilation system humming quietly as it circulated oxygen through the crowded space. Then the names started. They came from the vents, whispered in voices that sounded almost familiar. Names of people in the shelter, called one by one, as if someone was reading from a list. Ruth Benson's name, Owen Pruitt's name, a child named Lily Crane, whose mother pulled her close and covered her ears. Name after name, whispered through the metal ducts, drifting down from the ceiling. I remembered the 3rd rule. If you hear your name called from the ventilation system, do not respond. Do not acknowledge that you heard it. I moved through the shelter, whispering to people, reminding them not to answer, not to respond, not to acknowledge the voices no matter how real they sounded. Most people obeyed. They were scared now, had seen what happened to Harold, had heard the thing outside the door. They understood that the rules were real. But a teenage boy named Wesley Grant answered. He was sitting with his family near the back of the shelter when he heard his name. He looked up, confused, and said yes before anyone could stop him. The whisper from the vent changed, became louder, more insistent, more focused. It called Wesley's name again and again, the voice growing clearer with each repetition. Then Wesley started speaking, words in a language no one recognized, pouring from his mouth in a torrent of syllables that made no sense. His eyes rolled back, his body went rigid, and the language kept coming, filling the shelter with sounds that hurt to hear. I remembered the fifth rule. If anyone begins speaking in a language they do not know, move them to the center of the room immediately. Do not let them touch the walls. I grabbed Wesley and dragged him away from the wall, pulled him to the center of the shelter, held him there while the strange language continued to flow from his lips. After 2 minutes, Wesley went silent. His eyes closed, his body relaxed, and he slumped against me. When he woke up 10 minutes later, he did not remember anything, but I remembered. I remembered all of it. The worst moment came near the end of the storm. An elderly man named Frank Downey, confused and disoriented, wandered towards the back of the shelter looking for a bathroom. He reached for the storage room door before I could stop him. The sixth rule was clear. The back storage room must remain locked during any storm. I shouted, ran toward Frank, but I was too far away, and Frank's hand was already on the handle, already turning it, already pushing the door open. The door opened 6 inches before I reached him. 6 inches was enough. I saw what was inside. Just a glimpse, just a fraction of a second. But it was enough. The storage room was not a storage room anymore. Where there should have been shelves of supplies and emergency equipment, there was darkness. Not the absence of light, but something more. A darkness that moved, that breathed, that watched with awareness that had nothing to do with eyes. And in that darkness, things were gathered, things that might have been people once, or might have been something else entirely, shapes that huddled and swayed and turned toward the open door with something like hunger. I slammed the door shut, pressed my body against it, felt the wood vibrate as something on the other side pushed back, held my ground while the pressure built, while the darkness tried to seep through the cracks, while the shapes on the other side clawed and scraped and demanded to be let out. Then the pressure stopped. The door went still. Whatever was inside had retreated. Frank stood frozen, staring at the door with eyes that had seen too much. He did not speak for the rest of the night. When he finally did speak again, 3 days later, he said only one thing. He said they were waiting. All of them. Waiting for someone to break the rules. After the second storm, I tracked down Virgil Tate. He was living in a nursing home 2 counties away, 91 years old, his mind fading. But when I mentioned the rules, something in the old man's eyes sharpened. Virgil told me what he knew. He said the rules had appeared in 1974, the same year the shelter was built. Said they had always been there, always protected the people who followed them, always punished those who did not. He said the shelter was built on old ground, ground that the indigenous people had avoided for generations, ground that early settlers had learned to fear. When the tornado hit in 1973 and killed all those people, the town decided to build a shelter anyway. Build it right where the ground was cheapest, right where no one else wanted to build. The rules appeared on the first night the shelter was used. Virgil was there. He saw them materialize on the wall, letter by letter, as if written by an invisible hand. He said something lived beneath the shelter. Something old, something hungry, something that tolerated human presence only as long as certain rules were followed. The rules were a bargain, a contract, an agreement that had kept people safe for 50 years. Follow the rules and you survive. Break them and you belong to whatever waits below. Virgil had managed the shelter for 30 years without a single casualty. He followed the rules religiously, enforced them without explanation, and never told anyone the truth. Now it was my turn. Virgil grabbed my hand with surprising strength, told me never to break the rules, never to question them, never to assume I knew better than whatever had written them. Then he closed his eyes and refused to say anything more. It has been 3 weeks since my conversation with Virgil. Tornado season is in full swing, and the shelter has been used 4 more times. Each time, I have enforced the rules. Each time, everyone who followed them has survived. But the strain is wearing on me. The weight of knowing what lurks beneath the shelter, what waits in the darkness during storms. What would happen if the rules were ever broken completely? I have seen things I cannot explain. Movement in the corners of my vision during storms. Shadows that fall in the wrong direction. The storage room door rattling in its frame. Something on the other side testing the lock, waiting for an opportunity. I have heard things too. Voices in the ventilation when no storm is present. Knocking on the door in the middle of the night. My own name whispered from the walls of the shelter when I do my inspections alone. The thing below is patient. It has been waiting for 50 years, following the rules of its own, tolerating the human intrusion into its space. But I can feel it growing restless, can feel its hunger increasing with each storm, each gathering of warm bodies above its domain. I do not know how long the bargain will hold, do not know if there will come a storm when the rules are not enough, when the thing below decides to claim everyone regardless of what they do. All I know is that I must keep managing the shelter, keep enforcing the rules, keep the people of Grover safe from the tornadoes above and the darkness below. If you ever find yourself in a storm shelter, any storm shelter, look at the walls. Look for rules that do not make sense, instructions that have nothing to do with tornado safety, warnings that seem designed for threats no one talks about. If you find such rules, follow them. Do not question them. Do not dismiss them. Do not assume they are pranks or mistakes. The rules exist for a reason. They protect you from things that wait in the spaces below, in the darkness that gathers when people huddle together in fear. I do not know how many shelters have rules like mine. Do not know how widespread the bargain is, how many communities have made deals with things that should not exist. I only know that my shelter is not unique, that the darkness below Grover is not the only darkness, that there are old hungers all across this land that have learned to coexist with humans through careful negotiation. Every time before I open the shelter, I read the rules, all 7 of them. I remind myself what they mean, what they protect against, what will happen if they are broken. Then I open the doors and let the people in. Let them crowd into the concrete bunker. Let them escape the tornado above. Let them shelter in a space that belongs to something else. And I pray that everyone follows the rules, because the thing below is listening, always listening, counting every transgression, remembering every person who speaks or opens their eyes or answers when their name is called. One day, I fear, the transgressions will add up. The patience will run out, the bargain will end. And when that day comes, no rules will save anyone. But until then, I will keep managing the shelter, keep posting the rules, keep doing my job, because someone has to stand between the people and whatever wrote those rules. Someone has to remember what happens when they are broken. The sirens are going off again as I write this. Another storm, another tornado warning, another night of shepherding frightened people into the darkness below. I can already hear them gathering at the community center, can already feel the presence beneath the shelter stirring in anticipation. I will go now. I will open the doors. I will seal them behind me and enforce the rules and hope that everyone listens. If you never hear from me again, you will know what happened. You will know that someone broke the rules, and you will know that the bargain finally ended. But if the morning comes and Grover is still standing, if the people emerge from the shelter unharmed, if life continues as it always has in this small Oklahoma town, then you will know something else. You will know that the rules still work. You will know that the darkness can be bargained with. And you will know that somewhere in a concrete bunker beneath a community center, a man named Dean Hartwell is still doing his job, still reading the rules, still keeping the faith, still waiting for the next storm to come.